So in this, the third and final of the Agile and Lean mini lectures, we're going to have a look at how we will make use of the principles, Agile and Lean principles, within this particular project. And we'll start off by recognizing that Agile isn't easy. And when I say Agile, I mean Agile and Lean. This is not an introductory programming technique. It's actually one of the more sophisticated, complicated, demanding ways of developing software. So let's have a look about why that's the case. And then from that, we'll work out, okay, well, why we're taking the first few steps within this particular project. Now, one of the reasons that Agile works so well is that it is a devolved way of managing the project. You don't have one single manager that is dictating and telling everybody, you must do this, you must do that. Rather, the team is freed up so that they can decide how long something will take. They can decide how to go about doing something. They can decide when something is done. So Agile, it works well and works remarkably well when you have a team of experienced, capable developers, people who know how to manage their time, can communicate well with clients amongst the team, people who are able to have a reasonably good guess about how long it would take for them to implement a particular piece of functionality. So it's not something that you can simply take a group of programmers who've never done anything by way of large-scale development before and simply put them into it and expect it to work. It works best where you have teams of people who have some experience of doing these types of things. So what that means is that within this module, we're just going to take the first few steps. We're going to take, first few steps, pick up some of those core principles and get those well grounded, well established. And doing that then will enable you, when you go out in your year in industry and within other modules, to build upon them, to take the next few steps after that. And it won't be too long before you'll be quite an experienced and capable developer. So for us, the things that we will be focusing on is the iterative development and creating high quality software that is actually useful and meaningfully useful. So let's look at each of these bits. So we'll start off looking at iterative development and how we're going to try to ground it within the module. So you already know we're going to chop time up into a number of different sprints. We will be using 3-week sprints where we'll have not a full week, but maybe half a week set aside for a bit of planning, a bit of retrospection, and then the remaining 2.5 weeks in terms of development time by way of delivery of whatever it is you're planning to do within that sprint. You will be deciding what it is you want to do, and you're only going to be planning for, as mentioned, 2.5 weeks worth of development. Whenever you decide what it is you want to accomplish within that sprint, I'm then going to ask you to commit to delivering that. So this is not kind of a wish list. It's not you deciding, well, I'm going to try to get this done and maybe we will, maybe we won't. Rather, you're saying to me that we've looked at it, we've planned it out, and we are confident that we can get X, Y, and Z done within this sprint. And that means that you will get X, Y, and Z done within it, 9 times out of 10. So we're looking for that level of commitment within each of the sprints, that if you say you're going to do something, you do it. And that's going to help then establish that when we're planning for things, we want to take it seriously, we want to try to plan as best we can. And whenever we commit to something, well, we do commit to doing it. We have a responsibility to get this done. We want to get it done, and we'll work towards making sure that it is done within the time available to us. Next one up, or the next principle, is we're going to, at the end of each sprint, aim for a potentially shippable increment. We'll say what exactly we mean by way of that in the context of this module. So a potentially shippable increment, something you could sell to the client, something the client would pay money for. That's the basic notion behind a potentially shippable increment. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be giving you money for the stuff that you're doing. Towards the end of the project, you may want to put this up in the App Store, but if we're to contextualize potentially shippable increments within the context of this project, then what we mean by that is that it is something that gives you marks. I think that's actually in the third point. Yes, so you should ensure that each sprint provides additional code that will attract marks. So each sprint, I want you to be thinking about what are we going to put in, and then how is that going to contribute to provide you something that when you hand it in to me, I will say, this is great. There's some marks for doing that, that you've shown me nice complex algorithms, you've shown me lovely design. Now, the benefit for doing this, which ties into the middle paragraph and the bottom bit of the third paragraph, is that it reduces risk. The reason you would do potentially shippable increments is that you're going back to the client and you're showing them useful things every single iteration. And it means then that the client can see this coming together. They can see how it's going, they can see how it's shaping up. It doesn't all magically appear at the end. And it's for that exact same reason that we're going to aim for this within this module. I don't want you to get in a position where you are relying upon everything coming together and working in the last couple of weeks of the project. That's not a position you want to be in, because you're the ones facing risk here. Rather, after the end of each sprint, I want you to be able to, notionally, if you like, bank some code that you've developed that will get you some marks. And it means then as you go through the project, you can sort of say, yes, we're building this up. We're amassing our code base of good, useful, runnable pieces of software. And your game will then emerge after every sprint. And it'll make it a lot more comfortable, a development process for yourself. The final area we're going to look at is the notion of bulletproof code. So very often when you go to a developer and you say, well, you're going to implement a particular feature, is it done? And they say, yes, done. It doesn't necessarily mean that, yes, I have written the code and I've fully tested the code and I'm happy with the structure and the layout of it, and I've gone back to the client, the user, and they've accepted it as well. Very often if you say, yes, we've done it, sometimes it just means it's been coded. Now, that's a problem, and it's a recognized problem within Agile approaches, so that most Agile approaches, they have what's known as a DoD, definition of done. They say, okay, well, what does done actually mean? What are we going to define it to mean? And sometimes you hear sort of done, which means it has been completely done, it's been completely tested, it's ready to be deployed to production. In other words, it is bug-free, client's happy with it, we can push the thing out. So, context of this module, you're going to be asked to develop something, or you're going to be deciding yourself what you want to develop within each of the sprints. At the end of that, I want you to focus on saying that if something is done, it means that you have tested, you are happy with it. It is the type of thing that you would be willing to submit in to be assessed. You don't have loose ends, it's not messy, it is properly done. And there's real benefit in doing this, because you get what's known as a deficit. Different types of deficit, like a technical deficit, where if you leave bugs into it or leave things undone, it mounts up, and it's time you're going to have to spend it at some point within the overall process. So if you get it done at the end of each sprint, well, it is out of the way. It's not a loose end you have to pick up and try to find time later on. So overall then, for us within this module, the three things we're going to aim to do. You're going to aim to commit to delivering whatever functionality you plan to deliver within the sprint. You're going to make sure that each sprint provides you with features for your development that will attract marks. And finally, when you do something, you're going to ensure that you're happy with it, that it's not going to be messy, it's not going to be bug-ridden, but it's the type of thing when you say, I've done it, you would be willing to submit it in to be assessed. And hopefully you'll see that these three things here are all things that underpin, are all Agile and Lean principles, that underpin the Agile and Lean approaches. But equally, they're all things that will serve you remarkably well for the project in terms of enabling you to best approach it and to mitigate the risks that you sort of face by way of doing the project.